What the hey, MegaPodTastic's Krazy Joe coming at you back at the old space bar. Haven't shot a video here in a while. And got to talk about things that are happening in the world of science fiction fandom, specifically the two top science fiction franchises, Star Trek and Star Wars. Two franchises that have very, very, very little in common and really aren't that comparable, that for some reason people always seem to lump together simply because they have the word star in the title. You always hear people say, oh, Star Trek versus Star Wars, Star Trek versus Star Wars, which is better? There's a rivalry, Star Trek, Star Wars. There's really not a rivalry. Star Wars is definitely more mainstream. I think because it's more of a fantasy saga than science fiction. It's not hard sci-fi at all. Star Wars. It's the Jedi are wizards. It's space wizards. I mean, it's fantasy set in space. It's very, very, very mainstream. When I was a kid growing up in the 80s, you were kind of picked on and a nerd if you liked Star Trek, but everybody liked Star Wars. You didn't get picked on for liking Star Wars. Now, from what I understand, the generation after me, Star Wars became a little nerdier, probably because at that time in the 90s they weren't making Star Wars movies anymore, so it was sort of this thing from the past. This is my guess. It's this thing from the past that if you were a kid, I guess in high school, raving about Star Wars, that was of a previous generation, so maybe you got picked on then. That's my speculation. I don't know for sure because that was not my experience. When I was a kid, everyone loved Star Wars. The nerdy kids loved Star Wars. The cool kids loved Star Wars. It was mainstream. That was not the case with Star Trek. And that certainly was not the case with Doctor Who. Doctor Who fans, like in the 80s, if you were a Doctor Who fan, you were like the biggest outcast on the planet. That was like the nerds of the nerds. That was really deep digging nerdy stuff there, and now that's incredibly mainstream too. Why do I bring this up? Star Trek and Star Wars have been in the news a lot lately. There has been some news. Am I getting too much of a glare here? Should I do something with the lights? I don't know. I'm just gonna let it go. If I have a glare here, sorry. So this week, Solo, a Star Wars story, did not do well at the box office. That's old news now. And it's stupid news. Quite frankly, it's stupid news. There is a segment of the Star Wars fan base patting themselves on the back, so proud of themselves that Solo did not do well at the box office. There was a effort to boycott Solo. That was a hashtag you saw on Twitter. If you looked on Twitter, look it up. Boycott Solo, boycott Star Wars. It was this big thing from a group of fans, so-called fans. I have to question whether they're even really fans. I said this on the last MegaPodTastic podcast, I don't like gatekeeper fans who say you are not a real fan if you don't like this, or you are not a real fan if you do like this. I don't like that. So at the risk of sounding like a hypocrite, I'm going to kind of do that, but I do believe it's different in this case, because these were fans who were saying boycott the entire franchise because we didn't like this one movie. Now, like I said, I don't like the gatekeeper fans, so I would never say you're not a true fan if you don't like episode 8. I would never say you're not a true fan if you do like episode 8. Whether you like episode 8, The Last Jedi, or not is your subjective opinion, and whatever that opinion is, you're entitled to it. The reason I call these fans fandom into question is because they took their dislike for this one movie and they applied it to the franchise as a whole, which if you are a fan of the franchise, your goal should always be for these movies to be good or better. For example, I love Star Trek, love Star Trek. I hated Star Trek Nemesis. Couldn't stand it. Well, I didn't walk out of Star Trek Nemesis and say, Star Trek is ruined. This movie ruined Star Trek. I just said, wow, that was a load of crap. I hope the next one is better. My goal was to see the quality improve and say, well, this is terrible. Let's see the next one actually be good. Whereas with The Last Jedi, fans were saying, this has ruined Star Wars. This has ruined the saga. So if your love of these films can be so easily shattered by one film, then I have to ask, did you really love these films? Because my love of all the Star Trek movies was not ruined by Nemesis. I went in and said, I hate this movie, but I didn't hate the franchise. And when I saw people say, The Last Jedi ruined Star Wars. Star Wars is ruined forever. I'm done with Star Wars forever because of The Last Jedi. This is where I call fandom into question. Because if you are so willing to wipe your hands of the entire thing over one movie, then did you ever really love the entire thing that much to begin with? Because I think the fan response is to say, I did not like this movie. I want the next movie to be better. Now, here's where Star Wars fandom was incredibly stupid. And I've been saying it for months, since this boycott Solo thing started. I said, wait a minute. You didn't like a Rian Johnson movie. You didn't like a Rian Johnson movie. So your solution is to boycott a movie that was written by Lawrence Kasdan and his son and directed by Ron Howard. The guy who you claim ruined Star Wars had nothing to do with Solo. He didn't write it, he didn't direct it, but Rian Johnson is signed to make another Star Wars trilogy. If it's Rian Johnson's version of Star Wars that you hate, then the logical thing to do is to boycott the Rian Johnson Star Wars trilogy. When episode 1 of Rian Johnson's trilogy comes out, don't go see that one. That sends a message to Disney. We don't like what this guy does to Star Wars. Personally, I love The Last Jedi, and I love what Rian Johnson did with Star Wars, and I can't wait to see his trilogy. So it's a moot point for me. But if you didn't like what he did, then he's the guy you gotta boycott, not Ron Howard. So, all these fans boycott Solo to show that they didn't like The Last Jedi. It made no sense. And now as a result, the Obi-Wan movie and the Boba Fett movie are dead. They're not happening. And I see the same people bitching online saying, I wanted that Obi-Wan movie. I can't believe it. Disney got the wrong message. And I said, well, no, you sent the wrong message. Rian Johnson's movie made a ton of money. The spin-off of Star Wars story didn't. You sent them the message, these movies make money, these movies don't. I don't like this, so I'm going to boycott this. It doesn't make sense. It never made sense. So I'm a little disappointed. I was looking forward to the Boba Fett movie. When they first started making spin-off movies, the two I wanted most were Solo. I wanted the Han Solo movie and the Boba Fett movie. They were my top two. Obi-Wan, I'm not that enamored with Obi-Wan. I'm not that enamored with the Jedi, I gotta say. I love Star Wars, but the Jedi have never been my thing. It's always been the characters like Han Solo or Lando, the smugglers, the bounty hunters. Those are the characters I gravitate more towards in Star Wars than the Jedi. So I was very excited about their movies. And Obi-Wan, he's not that interesting of a character to me. Now, I would have gone and seen his movie. I definitely would have. I will go see all the Star Wars movies. So I would have been there opening day for the Obi-Wan movie. It's just the one I was probably the least excited about. But now they're both dead, and that's upsetting. And I'm happy Rian Johnson's still getting his trilogy because I want to see what he's going to do with it. And the Game of Thrones guys have a trilogy. I can't wait to see what they do with their trilogy. And Kathleen Kennedy's talking about episodes 10, 11, and 12 with the continuing adventures of Rey and Poe and Finn. And I can't wait to see what they're doing with that. But I really feel that the Star Wars fan base really did a stupid thing here. And I've been saying it for months. I feel like a broken record. Every time I heard boycott Solo, I said, you're boycotting the wrong film. You're boycotting the wrong film. You don't like this, so boycott this. Don't boycott that because you don't like this. Doesn't make sense. And they screwed themselves. And now the Obi-Wan movie is not going to happen, which so many fans wanted. And all I could say is, you did this. You made that happen. So, good job. Sarcastically. Well, as disappointing as that is, good news did happen this week, and that is we're getting more Star Trek. We're getting more Star Trek. So it's like we lost Star Wars, but we're getting more Star Trek. Gretchen Berg and Aaron Harberts, the producers of Star Trek Discovery, I talked about this on a video earlier in the week. They have been fired due to abusive behavior to the staff, which is not cool. And it's upsetting because they did an excellent job with Disco. Disco Season 1 was tremendous. Now, I know there's some vocal Star Trek fans who hate Discovery, but I have personally never met, and I'm not saying they're not out there. They may very well be out there. I'm just saying I haven't met them. I have not met a single Star Trek fan, that disliked Discovery for any reason other than aesthetics. Every negative review I have ever heard from someone who claims to hate Discovery, it's all been aesthetics. It's all been, how come this show looks so futuristic, but it's supposed to take place before the original series? They don't match up. How come the Klingon makeup's different? Those don't look like Klingons. How come the uniforms are different, but it's supposed to take place after the cage? That doesn't make sense. Every last thing is visual. I haven't heard anyone say they dislike the stories. Again, those people may be out there. I'm not seeing them. Most Star Trek fans I know who could get past the aesthetics loved Discovery. It got really, really good reviews from fans. Fans loved it, and it was a big hit for CBS All Access, and it was a tremendous show. I'm a lifelong Star Trek fan. Star Trek's my favorite media property of all time. And Deep Space Nine is my favorite Star Trek series, with the original series a close second. But Discovery Season 1, man, it was the best inaugural season a Star Trek series has had since the original. And it has the raw potential to be even better than Deep Space Nine if they keep the momentum up of what they were doing in Season 1. So I support Berg and Harberts being let go for the reasons they were let go. But it saddens me because they were so good at what they were doing in making the show that I hate to see them go. Alex Kurtzman has replaced them, and Alex Kurtzman is, I don't know what to expect from him. He's a guy who has had his name attached to some real garbage. He co-wrote The Amazing Spider-Man 2, a movie I hate. He co-wrote a couple of the Transformers movies, including Dark of the Moon, which is the worst. No, is it Dark of the Moon? Revenge of the Fallen? The second one, Transformers 2. He co-wrote that one, and that is like the worst of the Transformers movies. Though actually I heard The Last Night is actually even worse. I haven't seen The Last Night. And the Mummy movie he made wasn't well received. I didn't think it was that bad. It wasn't that great either, though. So he's had his name attached to some real garbage, and that is cause for concern. However, he was a producer on Season 1 of Disco, and Season 1 was great. And he has a fairly good track record in television. He was the producer of the TV series Limitless, which my friend Sam Roberts absolutely adores. I started watching it, and it's pretty good. We're going to do a retro podtastic segment on an upcoming MegaPodTastic podcast where we talk about Limitless. And Sam's a huge fan, and I like what I'm seeing, and my wife's been watching it too, and she likes what she's been seeing. So he was a producer on that. He was a producer on Fringe, which was a very popular show. So it seems that Oh, and I don't watch it, but he also was a producer on Hawaii Five-O, the remake of Hawaii Five-O, which has been on CBS for years. So that's definitely been a success. I don't really watch police procedurals, though, so it's not a show for me. So it seems that whereas in movies he's had a really rocky track record, on television he's had a much, much better track record. It reminds me of McG. McG, the director McG, made some real crap movies that I hate, like Charlie's Angels. And, oh God, I'm drawing a blank. I can't even remember movies he made. But I know every movie I ever saw by McG, I hated. However, he became a television producer, and he was making terrific shows, like he's a producer on Supernatural, I believe. And he made Chuck. He was a producer on Chuck, which was one of my favorite shows. And the TV version of The Human Target, the DC Comics character, The Human Target, that was on several years ago, McG was a producer. So again, terrible in movies, really good on television. So it looks like Kurtzman might be one of those guys. So I am keeping an open mind, and I'm really hoping for the best. So this week we find out Alex Kurtzman is developing 4 new Star Trek projects for CBS All Access, which makes a lot of sense because CBS All Access is pretty much an upstart. They've been around for a few years, but this last year was the year they really were like making their first push and saying, no, we're going to get subs. And last year when Disco came on, a lot of people were like, yeah, they don't have enough content. Why would I want to subscribe to them? They don't have enough content. And I kept saying, you got to give them time. Netflix didn't have a lot of original content at first either. House of Cards was the first Netflix original series. More followed. So it's like that with every show. There's got to be the first. There's got to be the first original show. And then eventually they had a second and a third. So with Disco, or with All Access, we got Star Trek Discovery. We've got The Good Fight, which is a spinoff of The Good Wife. Not a show I watch, but that's 2 original shows right there. Then they added that comedy show by Will Ferrell, which the title's escaping me, but I saw a couple episodes and it's pretty funny. So there's 3 original shows. And they got a new show by Ridley Scott that just premiered. I haven't seen it. So that's 4 original programs on CBS All Access now. And they have Jordan Peele's remake of The Twilight Zone coming up, which is another one I would sub just to see that. So if you want content, if people say, oh, well, CBS All Access doesn't have enough content, I'll get it if there's more shows I want to watch. Then adding more Star Trek makes total sense. Because if you only do 15 episodes of Discovery a year, you can have another Star Trek show ready to go when Discovery ends. And it sounds like that's what they're going to do. So they're doing a new series set at Starfleet Academy. Starfleet Academy has been, for as long as I could remember, going back to the 90s, it has been the most brought up possibility for a spin-off. Every time there's going to be a new Star Trek spin-off, the rumor, well, it's going to be Starfleet Academy, has always come up. And there's some fans who've always poo-pooed that and said, oh, that's just going to be like 90210 in space. And, you know, maybe it will. But the fact that it keeps coming up, since the 90s till now, every time a new spin-off idea comes up, people go to Starfleet Academy. That tells me people have ideas for stories. So give it a shot. It's either good or it isn't. I'll watch it. If it's not good, I won't keep watching it. There's only one Star Trek series I ever bailed on, and that's Voyager. I didn't really like Voyager, so I bailed on it in season 4. And to this day, Voyager is the only Star Trek series that I have not seen every episode of. So I will bail on a Star Trek series if I don't like it. So if Starfleet Academy is not good, I'll stop watching. But I'll give it a shot. And the other 2 are mini-series. There's going to be 2 Star Trek mini-series. Now, one of them we heard rumors of a year ago. We heard Nicholas Meyer was working on a mini-series about Khan and the time he spent in exile between Space Seed and Wrath of Khan. And that's an exciting prospect because Nicholas Meyer is the guy who gave us the Wrath of Khan. So, of course, him telling a Khan story is going to be of interest because he's the guy who really made that character kind of cool. I mean, Space Seed's an okay episode. The most memorable thing about Space Seed is that it's the movie that led to the Wrath of Khan. Khan really became the cool character he is in Wrath of Khan under Nicholas Meyer. So Nick Meyer making a Khan in Exile miniseries, I'm all over that. And the most exciting news is that Patrick Stewart is in talks to come back as Jean-Luc Picard for a Picard miniseries. And then there's also rumors about an animated series. This is cool stuff. The Star Wars news was a blow. If you're a fan of Star Wars, that news was a blow. And it was like, wow, that's disappointing. But then we got this Star Trek news. So, and personally, I think Star Trek and Star Wars are apples and oranges. They're really hard to compare because they're not very similar. But having said that, I will say I like Star Trek better just because I like Star Trek better than everything. I like Star Trek better than the Avengers. I like Star Trek better than G.I. Joe. I like Star Trek better than E.T. Apples and oranges, but it's just my favorite thing. So there you have it. So that's this week. We've had good news in sci-fi, bad news in sci-fi. Good news, more Star Trek. Can't wait. Bad news, those Star Wars projects were canceled. It's disappointing. And I don't know, man. I wish fandom was in a better place these days. Because it just seems people are so angry and so nasty to one another. And I mean, the whole Kelly Marie Tran thing is just a shame. You didn't like the movie, so you took it out on her. She didn't write it. I mean, that was a heck of an opportunity. I mean, the worst movie you've ever seen was probably a tremendous opportunity for the actors who did it. Like my dad used to say, if I was a working actor, I'd happily do Police Academy 20 if they offered it to me. You know, those movies were always kind of looked down upon, but they kept actors working. You know, you're a working actor. You hear I'm going to be in you want to be in a Star Wars movie? Who's going to say no to that? So, for all you know, Kelly Marie Tran didn't like The Last Jedi. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe if I was offered a Star Wars movie, I'd say yes without reading the script, and I might read the script then and say, "Oh, this is garbage." But I would have already committed to it, and I'd still say, well, this may be garbage, but it's also a really good opportunity. Now, all right, I'm kind of babbling now. But there we go. The good, the bad. More Star Trek. Yay! Keep on wearing those pajamas. Oh, yeah. I almost forgot. We have a Facebook group now. If you are a fan of these videos and you want to connect with me or other fans of these videos, you can go to Facebook and look up Keep On Wearing Those Pajamas, the MegaPodTastic Pajama Lounge. Send a request. We'll let you in the group. Hope to see you there.